call. It seems we're all here, but if each person would just...
Okay, William Christmas.
Paul Figueroa.
Oscar Palacios.
Marika Choma.
David Henry.
So, rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, we have approval of the agenda. Are there any comments or edifications to the agenda?
Under 8B, Chairman Palacio, I'd like to add 8B under matters from the Historic Preservation Commission. Questions I have about prior commission meetings involving murals in the downtown historic district and acequia preservation.
You're talking about Section 8?
Section
What are
8.
we talking about?
Well, he's...
Paul wants to
I'm
add
lost.
something.
I'd like to know what's happened with the action to 2 Historic Preservation Commission meetings I attended back in February and March of last year as a citizen. And I would like to know what's happened with those issues from the staff.
Wouldn't that be further down when we get to number
That's what
8?
he's asking to put it on the agenda.
For when?
After 8B.
Today?
Yes, ma'am.
I see.
Well, you can add that to the agenda. I don't know if you're going to answer to your approval for,
No,
we'll discuss it,
thank you.
or we'll entertain anybody's questions. That's usually what we do. But we can add that to the questions. Like the floor.
Well, in response to that request, I would like to say that I have a digital record of the work that was done in prior meetings and the course that work took. And I'm happy to provide you, all commissioners, with actually a full digital record of the work done to date, the items discussed, including the acequia, including the Taos Plaza, everything that was discussed to date, and the status of all of those items to date. Have digital records of all of those. So I'll be happy to send those to all the commissioners for frame of reference
Well,
in
there you go.
absence of anything else at this
All we're
time.
discussing now is, are we going to discuss it? You know, we are going to discuss it at that time. And if you can make those comments at that time, please.
Oh, does Commissioner Figueroa, is he, when we discuss it, is that with knowledge of what has occurred before already? In other words, do you know where we had gone before and where we are up to date?
Let's discuss it in order of the agenda.
It's not on the floor right now. We're going to discuss it. Anything else like to be added to the agenda? So I entertain a motion, and at that time, part of 8B should be made note of.
Thank you.
I entertain a motion to approve. the
Move to approve the
Second?
agenda.
I second that motion.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? So it's approved. The next, we have the approval of the minutes. Do we have a comment on that? I don't know, 9th, okay.
I think for the July 9th meeting, if I might, Chair Palacio, say that neither I nor David Henry nor Bill Christmas were on the commission at that time, so it's up to you and Marika to move forward with
No,
that.
I put that out because I would imagine that that poses only the slightest difficulty if you wouldn't have those matters of record, but once provided with them, that might establish a continuity from which to continue where the commission left off. So if the commissioners are, agreeable to that, I'm very glad to send all of you a digital copy PDF of records of what occurred before. So is that
So what do you speak?
acceptable?
Wait a minute, right now, we're asking for approval of the minutes from July 9th, 2014, I believe.
Mr. Chairman, if I might point out that if a member was not present during those meetings, they must abstain from voting on the approval of those minutes.
Good. You were here.
Yeah, you were here.
The last meeting?
That was your first meeting.
That was your last meeting.
July 9th?
Well, they were amended July 9th, excuse me, it was August. You were here August 13th, were you?
Okay.
Huh? Okay, so excuse me, we're, the minutes dated August 13th.
Oh,
Got it.
The only one that wasn't here, I believe, was Bill Christmas.
that's correct.
So are there any comments on those notes?
I move to approve the agenda
The agenda's been approved.
and approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Also, the amended agenda of July 9th and August 13th.
Agenda or minutes? Wait.
I'm sorry, minutes.
Very good.
I move to approve the minutes of the amended July 9th minutes and the August 13th, 2014 minutes. Thank you. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Here we go.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we go to citizens forum. Citizens wishing to speak shall limit their comments to 5 minutes or less. And Judy, did you? Yeah.
Okay, hi, everybody. Thanks for letting me talk tonight. I just wanted to touch back on actually what Paul Figueroa put on 8B, but I'm not going to be here through the whole thing. As I had come before with a tenant of mine, Moises Salcedo, who is one of my tenants in my building. He is one of the greatest Chicano artists in the world, literally. And what he's famous for are his murals. And I have the perfect location, well, a couple of locations on my property there on Cantu Hill. And at some point, I would really love for him to do some historical murals. And we're not going to do it without, of course, coming with for your approval and, with proofs of what it is we want to put up there. And I just wanted to put it past you, like Silver City, who has a lot of murals in our historic downtown area would be an asset, and inviting to tourists to come and see him, especially of his caliber of murals. He has them all over the United States. And he did come with me the last time and gave a sample of his work. And Marika and Oscar, you both saw. And I don't know if any of you others have seen any of his work at his gallery, which is at 122 Paseo del Pueblo Sur. And I'd encourage you to go look at his work. He just had a layout this summer in the Lowrider magazine. It was a color layout. And he did mention Taos in there. And so far, it would really be nice if he was acknowledged by somebody in Taos for his incredible work. But I'd really like for you to work on murals in the historic district, you know, to include them. I think it's a good thing. The second thing that I wanted to bring up was I'm not real sure if you guys ever completed the sign ordinances in the historic district. Fortunately, I haven't had to need a sign lately, but I'm getting a new tenant now who's going to need one. And I just wanted to know if all your sign code was complete, you know, types and styles and colors and sizes, everything. There was just a little bit of question. I had heard that it was never completed. So I don't know if there's truth to that or not, but.
Well, Judy, if I may, in terms of murals, I think we were here for your presentation and so forth. In terms of acting it into a law, I don't think that we've done that, and I don't think that we have completed the verbiage and so forth on the sign. And also a lot of historic work that we had worked on in terms of the different areas. Those are matters that were being brought up recently, and there has been changes in staff. In fact, there's nobody heading our department of the planning and zoning. And my basic understanding about the murals, I think that you and your artists should bring a presentation to us and propose what you want to do. And we as a commission will weigh it at that time.
Yeah, I was just a little concerned whether, you know, it had been banned from the historic district.
I don't think
or
it's been
not,
banned.
so-
I think that there are examples of murals in the town, but I think that we reserve the right to see what it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
And if we feel it's appropriate. I think that the last time you came here with that gentleman, the particular mural that was presented to us was dubious. It didn't, we're not sure if it.
Oh, that actually wasn't what we wanted to do. It was just an example of.
Well,
his
no, but
work,
well,
so,
I'm just saying, as an example, it wasn't that acceptable in general that I remember. If you have a mural in mind, at this time, we would entertain to review it, see.
Okay, we'll do
That's
that. I'll come to a future meeting and we'll put something together to show you guys.
And in terms of rewrite to the code and so forth, those are issues that have to do a lot with staff and procedure. And you as a commissioner, I would implore you to get us some people at the top to help us out, and also for that staff to give them support. They were very booked or whatever, overworked. There was a lot of things that are issues that if that were completed, or if there was staff, we would welcome. But you should know there's nobody helping us out in terms of that. It takes writing and presenting it and refinement, and we don't have that. In fact, there was a whole study done at one point that we hired a fellow to come in and consult, Dan Featheringill,
I remember.
and I think that was just dropped from the town council. We've proposed other things before, and they've been dropped also. It's hard to get things through. We just make recommendations. So in terms of a final draft of the sign ordinance, or how much of that has the murals in it, and rewrites of the code, it takes quite a bit of litigation that we as a commission don't have. We don't have all backing or support, or the,
Okay, well, I'll bring that up. I'll bring that up and stay on that to
appreciate it, thank you.
find out answers for you. But it'll probably be something that we're looking at next spring, any possible murals. So, but in the next 60 days, we'll bring you some samples of possibilities that we're thinking of historically,
Right,
tasteful, beautiful. And everything else, we're in the works of getting a department head for P&Z and all the staff that we need. So I'm not horribly worried about that because I know that it's in the works, so.
right, and so in terms of the mural and so forth, this is a public meeting, and that should be publicized, and the citizens carry a lot of weight. So
Okay.
we would hope that would be publicized enough that we get the input of the town.
Well,
We don't just make decisions without it. We do as default, but
Well, thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add, at the risk of annoying my boss, for every procedure that a municipality puts in place, there always has to be an appeal process or a variance process. So if a rule would say that we don't permit murals, there has to be a process to hear on a case-by-case basis. But typically in historic districts, there isn't a de facto rule for or against, but because it is a historic district, in the case of murals, in the case of signage, they reserve the right to review that. And I believe what the chairman's saying is that if it was to be considered as an official action, it would need to be provided to the staff in time for it to be included in the package for that meeting, so that the public had an opportunity to review it on the internet in case anybody wanted to comment and add to the public record at that time.
Okay, well, we'll follow the procedure and I'll just keep you updated and thanks for your time and.
I'd like to add something here, because I think that this is a good moment to interject this. We certainly, as a commission, have the ability to take anything brought before us on a case-by-case basis. And we have done so, but also recognizing that in many instances, we still need to define the code, the sign code, and the design standards for the historic district. We had begun work on this, but it was not completed.
I recall.
And more especially the sign code, which has allowed situations to occur that prevent us from saying this code, the code is less than specific regarding some signage in quite a few ways. So if that were in place, we could apply that more across the board and still taking each situation that was outside of it on a case-by-case basis. But because we still have so many gray areas and we did not complete the work on the sign code and have it approved by the town council and now becoming part of the code, there have been quite a few lapses in situations, even on some signage in the Taos Plaza and so forth, that we really could not pursue any further until that code was made a bit more specific. So my feeling is that this commission has its work cut out for them as far as becoming even more specific with the design standards and much more specific with the sign code. And murals have been discussed by this commission, and in many different ways. There were some commissioners that felt that there should only be lettering of what that business is and not even the name of the business, and it varied all the way to other commissioners feeling that full-on murals were wonderful. And that's just an example of some of the things that need to be finalized and are still in process. But I think that once we accomplish that, it'll be much easier to go through due process with anyone that approaches the commission with any sort of idea for a mural or artwork, and we can work more fluidly with staff, and hopefully by then we will have more staff.
Well, being in the position I'm in now, please stay in touch with me so that we can keep the fire burning on this and get this through.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to bid you all good night.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Good night.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have in my notes from the first meeting I attended that was when Martha was still here, that on July 11th, on Friday, there was to be a town discussion on signage. It was going to be held at the county courthouse at 9 a.m. Do you know if that ever took place? I was unable to attend that, but, and I know that up until the time that the staff left, that they were working on signage codes. And I don't know what the state of that was by the time they left, so.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, my recollection was there was a marketing and tourism public forum, and that Martha had asked if she could tack on getting public input on the sign code at that time,
Yeah.
but that it was not ready in time to be presented, and it was felt that it was two separate matters, so that never happened.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Never met with people.
So, I guess next matters from staff is called, but so we have a proposal before us from this gentleman for repairing a wall in the Loma Plaza. And I guess my question would be if you happen to know, do you happen to have an opinion on that, or as a staff, or we could just entertain listening to him make a presentation?
Yes, I can tell you I've met with both of the staff on this matter and actually visited the site in anticipation of this meeting. And it was a recommendation of staff that they concurred with the applicant, that the preference is to have repairs done rather than demolition, but that further evidence should be presented by the applicant as to whether appropriate cost-effective repairs can be done to preserve the structure at this time.
Okay.
But they did agree that it was of an emergency nature and relief needed to be granted.
Thank you. Would you approach the mic and state your name and sort of tell the truth, please?
I'm just the agent for the owner. Susan couldn't be here tonight. But I did take a look at the wall, and I also studied historic preservations just to get some idea
Your
for
name?
myself what was going on.
Could you provide your name, please?
And we have a plaster.
Your name?
Oh, Barnard Voorhees. B-A-R-N-A-R-D. V like Victor, O-O-R-H-E-E-S.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Go ahead, excuse me.
Susan is a friend of mine. She invited me over to look at this thing and see what was going on, and I said, "Oh, you just need to plaster it." This was before summer, and with the rains and everything, it's gotten quite a bit worse on the thing. And I was looking at it recently with a plaster contractor, and we both decided that the whole thing needed to be done right. You can't just emergency repair it, and all the old plaster has to be taken off. There are a number of layers. It's all the interior adobe's rotting and pushing it out, and so, well, you have the pictures. And the way to do it correctly is to take all the plaster off, rebuild the wall as an adobe wall, and then plaster it again. Now, Susan hasn't, I wanted to meet with you guys first, but Susan hasn't heard this yet. It's going to cost her a little bit more than what we assumed in the beginning, but I think she has to go through with it. She loves that house. She's owned it for quite a while. And it is part of it. I think it was built in 17, that's what the plaque says, 17-something, 76.
Yes,
So.
yes.
So that's what I'm going to recommend to her. and I'm going to tell her it really has to be done. And I'm hoping that you'll agree with me that it has to be done, simply because to do it wrong, just to plaster it again, you're just putting it off for another year or two.
Can you orient the commission as to where this wall occurs on La Loma Plaza?
Yeah.
North, south, east, west? Is it internal to the plaza, or is it on a
It's
street?
internal to the plaza.
Uh-huh.
It's, in fact, both houses, a number of the houses have been gentrified, have been,
Renovated and
and it's sitting in the middle of two gentrified houses.
Okay.
And the wall, you can see from those pictures, I'm glad you have them, because it's completely collapsing.
Yeah.
It won't last another year.
Which side of the plaza is?
David,
this
it's on the
wall?
west side.
It's on the west side?
Yeah.
Or southwest.
South side.
South side.
South side, yeah.
It's on the southern.
Well, I visited the site, and the plaza is very beautiful right now in its present state. And I think it's a state plaque, or I think it's a state plaque, building. We don't, the state has jurisdiction on preserving that. We can approve for you to restore it. If indeed one of the options is to modify it, we would make a recommendation, but the state would want to know about it also. But I think for us to say that you want to repair and restore it, I think it's great. I think it's fitting to alter or take it down or move it is something that we would have an opinion on, but I'm sure the state would welcome, you know. So I think you can. My thing is, I think you can restore it without a whole lot of. We would stand behind that. You know, I think,
But-
if that's the pleasure of the commission, yeah.
Was there, I noticed in our agenda, it says that emergency repairs were going to be made. Now, has that been changed
I
to
don't know where that word-
restoration repairs?
When I first started, when Susan, she hadn't been here for a while, but when we talked to her, we went up to see it, it wasn't yet at the emergency stage, so I don't
Okay.
know where that word came from. I would say now it's at the emergency stage.
I understand.
Have you been able to troubleshoot what's causing the damage?
Well, it's clear what's causing the damage. The old plaster was cracked and everything, and she put she got some guy in there, and he just put a color coat on it, and it didn't help a bit. And what happens, it's been years, and over the years, the water comes down through the top, and it melts the adobe, and then the adobe pushes out
Right.
all the old plaster.
Sure.
And,
I visited the site as well. I had a look at the wall. And we were provided in our packet here on page 3, under preservation requirement, but we have page, and this is 16.16.220.7. But if you go to the next page, page 3 on the bottom, look under B, number 5, there are some really excellent guidelines for replacement and/or repair, stating that if something is replaced, at least 50% of that needs to be in a state that just simply can't be repaired. In addition, if it is a historical wall, and it dates way back, it can't be replaced in such a way as to use different materials. They need to be the identical materials with which that wall was created and the same look. And in fact, that wall does have plaques on it. And so that would be it. I think the outstanding question for moving forward as rapidly as possible is providing the commission and staff exactly what the plan for repair or replacement for that wall will be. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we can go forward and say, yes, it meets this criteria, and we can go ahead and approve it. But there is specific criteria. I hope that you receive this.
I did see that.
Okay.
Amy Rincon had emailed me this whole thing, and I'd gone through the whole.
And it's right in there.
Yeah.
50% or more of the original materials must be unrepairable in the written opinion of the code administrator in order to be replaced, provided that the new materials match the old in composition, design, color, and texture. So even if the owner wished to do something otherwise, she would not be able to do that.
She doesn't like it when a twig is broken off. She wants it the absolute original way.
All right.
We redid the entire, two of the rooms in the house.
Uh-huh.
I don't think you saw, but we
Right.
redid it, and there was a board floor over dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, you know, a pad would, no, we're keeping the boards. You know?
Right.
No,
All right.
she wants it exactly as it is. I have a question on that, though, which is the original materials were obviously the original Adobe,
Yeah.
which was not, there was no adhesive in it, there was no anything, and also the plaster on it was probably the original type of plaster that they did back 300 years ago?
It'd be
But
Adobe.
over time, they've done other things with it.
Sure.
Now, our job would be to go take all that off and rebuild the wall with the original Adobe. That was in our idea. That was in, Philip Valencia is the guy who's gonna be doing the work. And then plaster it with the techniques that we use today, minus the tar paper, which is pretty much what's on there now. In other words, I don't think we can go back to the original formula.
Correct. I think well, do you happen to have the date of the plaque? Was it hard plaster at that time?
I think-
Or
isn't
was
there-
it
isn't
hard
there a
plaster
picture?
No,
after?
when the plaque was put on.
Yes,
That's
sir.
a good question. No, I don't.
I think that would be the
not
date
there.
of acceptance of its motif. There are problems with hard plaster on old Adobes, and there are even more problems if you end up with acrylic hard plaster as opposed to cement stucco. I think what's on there now is cement stucco. And I think that some knowledge, like for instance, it may be that there'd be consideration for possibly stabilized adobe, and I think there should be consideration for extra precautions, i.e. Putting paper over the cap, you know, underneath the plaster so it doesn't show. But I mean, there are techniques that have come along to help it. If you don't protect the adobe, it's going to do the same thing again.
We're
So,
not sure, once you take the plaster off, what's going on in the ship.
right.
Pretty bad.
But the main thing, you should try to replicate the materials, but I don't think you should ignore some of the technology that has come forth. But the look of it should be that you can't tell what's underneath. Basically, it has the same look. That would be my recommendation.
We can match it to the other work that's been done around the plaza, because there's been a lot of, I won't call it remodeling, but gentrification.
There may in fact also be some photographs for the record, historical photographs of that wall that you might use as reference as well. My understanding, though, with this wall, when I had a look at it, was that it appears that it has been a good long while since that wall was adequately closed and protected. There were huge gaping cracks in there. And so water got in and just simply melted that interior adobe wall away to, you know, past the point of redemption. And so it's a shame that that maintenance, there was such a degree of deferred maintenance. And when I observed it, it appeared to me, anyway, that was really the greatest cause of this adobe meltdown.
There's no doubt.
Right. Okay, so now my concern is not so much about that we may have a problem when you rebuild it again. It's really a matter of continued maintenance. And so I think that there might be some photographs out there, just putting that out, if anyone wished to have a look at those. But I think more importantly, we just need to, the wall, we can see what the wall is. And if in this replacement, it continues to have that same look as that wall always has had, it should be fine. But we will need your plan, just for the record.
No, that'd be fine.
Right.
In fact, I need to give it to Susan too.
Right, right.
I have to say, I'm gonna have to sell it to her.
All right,
It's
all
gonna
right.
cost a little more than what you
Okay.
imagine.
Uh-huh.
Also, I give notice out there too that the decay is advancing to the left as you look at the house. And the old window is starting to rot, and all that needs to be done, and she was aware of that too.
Right.
So I guess where I stand right now is let me put together a plan. I got some pictures of what needs to be done and how we're going to do it. I agree with Commissioner Palacios here that there are some modern techniques that I don't think will offend anybody, and that have been used on walls and, well,
Sure.
and we'll do it that way.
Well, and my comment would be short of the acrylic plaster. I think it's been the trend the last 10, 15 years, and I would be against that. I think if you use cement plaster and the means for it, I don't know that. I think it's more a matter of staff in terms of your techniques to achieve the look. I guess we could default to that, but I don't see any reason other than the owner in the budget to delay the amount of work to be done. So
I completely agree. Absolutely.
I would entertain a motion from the floor of how to proceed, but I would recommend that if you're going for the same look, I think that's as far as our jurisdiction takes us.
Yeah, I have no objection as long as you don't use any synthetic materials for the plaster itself.
No,
I don't,
that's generic.
I have no problem using stabilized adobe block
All right.
as infill. Nobody's going to know the difference. Just don't get into these elastomeric stucco mixes. You'll really get in trouble. Just physically in trouble. It's the wrong thing to use.
I agree completely. I don't like this stuff myself. We put it on our house. I don't think you own
Look at the outside of the
Problems.
building
Would you-
across the street.
You want a motion?
I'm entertaining a motion. I think unless there's more discussion. I haven't.
Bill?
Do you have a motion?
No, I'm entertaining a
So
motion.
I would make the motion, and I'm referencing page 7 of our handout, that the Historic Preservation Commission, after hearing testimony, examination of the documents presented, and the findings of the facts, finds the applicant meets the provisions of sections of the Town-Taos Land Use Development Code and approves the request for certificate of appropriateness to repair the front wall at 108 Aloma Plaza with the condition that you reference the standards in B5 and share those plans and procedures with the appropriate staff at Town Hall.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Well, thank you so much.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Officers and men. Now, Amy's gone.
Yes.
Yes.
Assuming there's going to be someone in the staff.
I think that question.
I think you're-
Town manager's office.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard.
So we move on to item 8, which says appointment, but I believe it's a election of the 2 officers for our commission. It's been a long time coming. It's almost time for re-election in January, or February as it may be, but there's been quite a bit of shakeup. So at this time, I would entertain nominations for the chair for our Historic Preservation Commission.
I'd like to nominate you, Oscar. You know, I know you've had a long history with the commission. In fact, I think you were one of the people that you were an advisor, and you asked to have the commission broken out of the planning committee many years ago. So you seem very knowledgeable about the town. I know you have a very sincere interest in the historic aspects of downtown. So I move that you be chair.
I second that motion, Bill, and I share your sentiments on Oscar's knowledge of these things and the history with the commission. So I think he's the perfect candidate.
Well, thank you. Is there any other considerations for the chair in terms of the democratic process, or a first and a second is that enough to proceed with a vote?
Yeah, if there are no other nominations, I think that the maker of the motion can also move for
We close the nominations, do we do?
nominations be closed. The chair can do that, but you can move by acclamation, which means you're unanimously agreed on it if there are no other nominations.
Well,
So
first move to close the nominations. Chair.
chair.
okay, I move to close the nominations.
Or do you wish to be chair? The obvious question.
Yes, I would stand as chair for you guys if that's your wish.
Okay, then I move
Are
that
there
we,
any other nominations for anyone else? If
Well,
not, we
I think-
will just go ahead and that's it. Is that the election? Did we just select?
I think Rick said
Yeah.
that we
Yeah,
would
the
make a
maker of the
motion to
can move that by
to
acclamation.
move by acclamation. I make that motion.
So be it.
So we don't need to vote on that? That's
yeah.
the first and
What are we
second?
doing now?
Mr. Henry,
Aye, yes, I'm in favor of that.
Mr. Christmas,
Yes.
Mr. Figueroa,
Yes.
Ms. Chama, Mr. Palacios.
Yes. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So then I will open up the nomination for vice chair to act as a chair in my absence and all the duties that go with it. So if there are any nominations, I entertain them at this time.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Figueroa, if he's interested, for the vice chair position.
I'd like to second that.
Any other nominations? So there's, so then there are no others, so I close the nominations at this time, and I guess we'll take a roll call, see how the commission feels.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. Christmas,
Yes.
Mr. Figueroa,
Yes.
Ms. Chama,
Yes.
Mr. Palacios.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, now we'll go to the the questions of the vice chair.
Vice chair. Thank you.
As we were put on the agenda. And I think that'll be our, unless there are other matters, so go ahead, you may have the floor.
Thank you. I added the item to the agenda because as a citizen, I had attended some previous meetings. And I was just wondering, commissioners and staff, what the status of some of those discussion items were. And it may be that digital records can illuminate my knowledge about it. Having heard some of the discussion tonight, it seems like, for instance, the discussion about murals and direction to staff to bring something back on that item to the sign ordinance will, I guess, wait until staff has a chance to address that. But I would like to state also that murals can be considered public art, that they're not necessarily signs, that they don't promote or identify a business as such, although there is a wonderful mural on the hill on, is it San Antonio, leading up to La Loma, which identifies a historic business. But I think the presentations that I've heard, I believe, had more to do with public art or art murals, such as the one that is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year by George Chacon on the very prominent corner. So that's a request that I would have towards staff as they're looking at signage to begin to address the issue of murals as art rather than signs, and what the Historic Preservation Commission, Planning and Zoning would do with proposals in the way of a mural art rather than signage.
Right, but it would, yeah, I think that's something that could be added to the sign code as a subcategory that it be considered under that category. I don't know if we're going to have a whole ordinance for just art display. Although, that brings up a good point. There have been some things that have been snuck in along the way. One that comes to mind is and Judy was on the Historic Commission at the time. There is that one sculpture that they put up. I think it was brought up in a meeting, but I think that the sculpture and murals should be referred to in terms of the procedure. I don't think there was any approval process done for that sculpture. I think it was just done by the owner.
You're referring to the Padre Martinez
No,
sculpture?
no, don't get us started. No.
Wouldn't that be something?
That would be something, but we'll leave that with the Willow Park stuff. No, there's at the gorge, at the intersection of, the main intersection of
Yes,
town, by the
it's,
plaza,
Yes.
there's a
Quite
modern
Yeah.
sculpture that was put up, and some people found that offensive in terms of, if nothing else, that there was no procedure for it, that it was just installed. But I mean.
You're talking about a piece by Frank Steckler called Intersection, located at the entrance to the gorge on
Yeah.
Highway 64.
It's not a sign, it's not a mural, it's not a building, it's an object.
Yeah. So-
Again, I think that ultimately we are limited to some extent the things that we can discuss everything, but it's in conjunction with working with planning and zoning and code. And where we left off many times, multiple times, was that the code was not specific enough, and we needed to write new and more specific and clear code. With that, we can work better and more seamlessly with planning and zoning. And so murals, whether they end up in code, being included as a separate section under the sign code, or whether we create via writing code a separate area, that actually would be something that would need to be worked out. And that's just one example. We did go down the line for a bit on this, and it just wasn't finalized. So there's our work.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, I think those are all good comments, Manager Bellis, and I hope that we can have a meeting or discussion with the staff as they come on board and as we look at the sign ordinance and look at public art as being an important part for the Historic Preservation Commission in its review of items that are in the historic district. As far as the meeting on March 12th of 2014, where there was discussion and possible direction to staff to town code text changes to allow murals within the historic overlay zone. I'll wait for the staff.
Mr. Chairman, I'll review the notes of the prior planning director, and I believe felt she was fairly far along in that, and absent the public hearing that didn't take place, was ready to bring something back for codification. So I'll dust that off, and I'll send a copy back out of her final notes to all of you by email for your review. And if you so choose to want to discuss it at the next meeting, we can schedule it.
Okay, so I'm a little bit of a quandary about it. We seem to assume some of these duties, and I don't know how many of them have to do more with staff, with our input. In other words, what is the legal standing on that? I think that when we were reviewing some of the historic code, when we first formed the independent commission, I think Matt Foster was in charge at that time, and we were led to believe that we couldn't have a meeting dealing with that subject of the rewrite without his presence, or that it be publicized, or there were certain channels that we had to go through. It wasn't just, we could just decide to have a meeting about it. And then I know that there's a whole procedure that has to do with, we're basically making recommendations to the town council to adopt these ordinances into what it is, our guidelines, so to speak, the codes. And I'm not even sure where that all fits in terms of, we don't have home rule, and how much of this the state needs to second that we're writing some of these things. I'm not sure of the procedure of the rewrite of the codes. I feel that as a commission, we're non-paid citizens here to interpret the code. It's an additional duty, and we've had a hard time. We've discussed them ad nauseum. Like she said, there's people that want this and the people want that. A lot of discussion about the signage and so forth. But in terms of how to make that into law, what the procedure is, and how our voice can be incorporated into those procedures, I appeal to you or the town attorney or the staff to make it so that as we spend time having meetings and so forth, that it has some validity, that our recommendations are going to be either followed through or dropped, because I think we spend a lot of time rewriting, reshuffling. There's about 4 different versions, or at least a couple different versions of the rewrites, and I'm trying to get a handle. I would volunteer time towards some program that would get us somewhere, but for us just to discuss them, well, it's not a waste of time, but it's a waste of procedure. I mean, we're not getting anywhere. So we need some guidance on that. I would appeal to you to help us out. We feel that some of the stuff is outdated in the code, and we want to know how to go about making those changes. And we had hired with a guy, Dan Featheringale, I make reference to him. He spent a lot of time writing and rewriting, and then it just, it's another version.
I do think Ms. Perkins, Martha, before she left, was walking down this path of identifying loopholes and inconsistencies in our documents.
Mhm.
It's unfortunate she's no longer with the town, but I'm confident whatever staff we end up with will pick up where she left off.
That's right.
Good luck.
That is the hopeful thought. It is not easy to write code, and I have been serving on this commission prior to Martha Perkins, go all the way back to Matt Foster, and also right at a time where Alan Vigil stepped down. So it goes kind of a ways back. And at that time, the due process was that this commission did go through X amount of special meetings that were called outside of the monthly meetings to specifically work on code. That was then brought to planning and zoning, and there were a few upheavals in that department during that course of time. But at one point, my understanding was that from planning and zoning, the final version was to be, as far as brought to the town council and voted upon by the town council. If approved, some things were perhaps not approved, some were approved, and that created a document that was signed, and from there became code, new code. So as far as due process, that was my understanding. There were some upheavals, and so we were left at times wondering what had become code, what had not, because there were lapses, naturally with changes in the department, and some issues just simply, my favorite term is evaporated, and we just didn't have a follow-up at that time. So hopefully we can all work together to get a more consistency, in relation to that due process, and with whomever gets hired on.
Mr. Chairman, what I would suggest is that if you forward recommendations for changes or action to the next level, that is part of the motion at the end, that you direct staff to report back to you on what the outcome of that action was. The one step I would add, Commissioner, to the process that you outlined is that because we do have a Historic Preservation Commission that is created under the guidance of the state statutes and the State Historic Preservation Office, that not by state legislation but by agreement, we're responsible for reporting any changes to our guidelines to the state for comment. So that's probably one of the first steps you want to do before you engage the Planning Commission or the governing body, just in case for some reason they might have objections.
Very good.
Thank you. That's what I was, thanks for answering that.
Just a clarification now, this document, that's pretty big, it starts at 16.12.020. Are these in effect now, what were given to me in July by the staff?
Yes.
So this is the code that you were referring to?
The portion that refers to the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. But there are drafts of changes to
Is
this?
this everything? Probably not, but this is, what we have here is a portion, unless you have the binder. Yeah, there's an entire binder of code with the section for the historical.
Yeah, and that's what I just
That's
read.
the section that
Okay.
he
This
has.
is
a
our
copy of.
section of the.
Okay,
It's
There's a whole
titled
binder for the whole.
Commission, Historic Preservation Commission.
right, okay.
Okay.
I don't have your little green booklet, but I have the whole code book, and we're in there.
Okay.
What is this thing?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
you
So,
have-
this,
That's fine. Thanks.
I think this can kind of keep going.
So,
I look
well,
forward to working
I-
with you guys. No, I mean, you know, what,
I just want to add then, again, into the code, then something that was brought up at another meeting was an acequia presentation. And as we look at the code and look at directing future staff to add a section with murals for public art, I would welcome a section that helps us as the commissioners in the historic overlay zone know and have staff have the ability to bring before us concerns that someone is not honoring the acequia system, if that's the right term, is filling in acequias that should be actually preserved as they run through the historic overlay zone.
right, no, so I can answer that in the sense it's a chicken and egg thing. The Sequia Commission came before us, and we listened to them, and as a commission, we reassured them that we were all for their plan to try to reinstate the acequias. They're in disrepair, and I think that they're not that well regulated or written down, and we put the burden back on them that whatever they come up with, we would entertain. When we begin to write those things, that just adds to that burden, because they do what they want. I was hoping for things like water features from the acequias for the children to play in on the plaza and whatnot, and I was told at the time that they felt it was according to their bylaws or whatever their understanding, I think might be handed down word of mouth, is it's only for agriculture. So they came before us, and the way we left it is that they were going to come back when they got their stuff more together, and we welcome them. For us to, other than to say we honor that, I don't know what we can do. There's no real mapping of a cohesive map that we can all refer to.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we are in the process, at the next town council meeting, we will sign a memorandum of understanding with the Taos Soil and Water Conservation District, in which they already have mapped the current and the historical acequias and ditches, and it's our goal to have them be sort of our mentor in guiding as to what's realistic in being reinstated or preserved going forward, versus those that are just impractical. I mean, we've gone out to look at a couple of acequias that there were willows, huge willows that are probably 50 years or more old, and they're so disconnected from the system that they could never, no matter what you spent on them, you'd never get water to them again. But I do agree with your point that I'd spent a great deal of time at the county where we constructed a water advisory commission and a new land use code, which we tried to incorporate a lot of protections for the acequias. And to my surprise, the acequias actually balked at that, and they told us that was not our responsibility, that the state constitution recognizes them as a separate level of government over which we have no jurisdiction whatsoever. And you are also right that we wanted to do the restoration of the acequia through the Kit Carson Park, and we're told the same thing, that the water could only be used for irrigation purposes, and only for the purposes of the members that were originally part of those senior water rights. That we had thought the same thing. There was a Acequia comes right up to the northeast edge of the park, and there's just a small gate that prevents that from running back through. And approached the Pueblo about getting water for that, but actually everybody downstream, even though they're not connected anymore, had the ability to say the town and the park were not an intended use of that acequia. So it's a pretty complicated issue. And we can provide some general protections such as setbacks, so that people don't build parking lots that run water into the acequias. But in the end, if the acequia itself decides that they want to agree to something less than the land use code, they prevail.
Right. Thank you.
So when I look at the intent and purpose of the historic overlay zone, then, Manager Bellis, and it says that the town intends to protect, preserve, and perpetuate areas of historical, cultural, architectural, or artistic or geographic significance located within the town of Taos, acequias need not apply.
I would suggest that once we have the map from Taos Water and Soil Conservation, that we can bring that forward to you and the Planning Commission and make a determination as to whether we want to offer that a layer of protection. And there are, I believe that what the town does have is we have some public safety interest in doing that. For example, the old adage, if you want to find the red willows, follow the acequia. A lot of the dry acequias tend to be very overgrown, and that makes them natural fuses for fire to run between the most concentrated and oldest buildings of the town. And so we would have some interest in seeing that those areas are properly maintained.
Or that footbridges from the sidewalk onto property that crosses over in the acequia is safe for people to walk across.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So there was another, if I may, I kind of, seeing how our tolerance is, it just brings up another issue that's, I think it's unfinished business. And for me, I just, I would like to get to the bottom of, there's this charting of buildings or mapping of buildings that are either significant or contributing. And I think the last is around 1950 in terms of what we use. So there are buildings now that are at least 50 years old that are not on that map. So one of the things that Martha and staff was working on at the time was trying to bring that up to date. And there was one particular example of a proposal that came to us, and they had some nice old buildings there, and we as a commission asked them to keep them. And I understand they went even to the mayor to discuss why we could ask to keep something that was not marked. So once again, it's like we don't have the backing of a code or a map or something. And it extends beyond the historic portion of the town. It goes into the whole county. There are buildings here and there that need some protection. And even that, you can't just designate a building historic. You have to ask the owner where he wants it classified. In other words, they ultimately have quite a bit of rights. So
Well,
that along with the written stuff, to me, as a visual person, I would like to see a current statement or charting of what we feel is, maybe there's a third category, but there's for now, there's a significant and there's a contributing, and then maybe there's a wish to preserve, because it's a pretty delicate fiber of old buildings here. And I just hate seeing them melt into the ground or just be thrown by the wayside. And I've even seen them gone by the wayside through litigation or through the law. Just the intent is that they don't want to preserve them, they end up not preserving them. So I'd like, I'm not trying to dump on you on things that we want, but these are things that we're presented with in these hearings that they would like. I mean, the way some of the commissioners wanted section such and such for something, I would like to see a map that we can all, that's relatively contemporary, that we can refer to of buildings that are significant to the community and the historic fiber that we can help protect beyond just our interpretation. Although we've been assured by the former attorney that the reason there is a commission is that they welcome our opinion or our feelings about things. So our wanting to save a building that we feel is worthy carries a little bit of weight, but we have no, up to a point, we have no real legal backing. So I think that a map, so there's just some things, loose ends that were left, and I can't get on Martha, she's gone, but I mean, you know, how do we, I would like to see some of those continue because they're invaluable when it comes to the public and to our commission. And that's one of them, the mapping of buildings. And I think they were working actually on how to phrase it, that buildings outside of the historic zone would be, as a consideration brought before us to comment on. But I don't know that that's legal. And I don't know that the county's taken that up, or
No.
what happens with those things.
So,
Well, Mr. Chairman, there was actually an award of a state historic preservation grant that we just got about a month ago,
Oh,
month
good.
and a half. And originally, that was one of the things on the grant I asked for was, I think the last study was done by Rachel Prinz, but to expand the identification of significant, historically and culturally significant buildings beyond the list we have. And then for the consideration of eligibility for protection, but also to give you the ability to say no to modification or demolition, which if they're not on that list, you have no control of, and neither does the planning department.
Right.
And unfortunately, that got it readjusted to pay for a staff person and a walking match. And if I would like to actually go back, my goal was to expand, to make the Arts and Culture District and the Historic District the same in border, and to expand those. And particularly to look at the impact of just off Cantu Hill here in Placitas, where, you know, you may have a historic building and 25 feet away, you're going to have McDonald's, and you can have all these steel crappy buildings which seem to be encroaching more and more on the edges of the district. Also in that grant, and I don't think there'll be enough money for it, but State Historic Preservation agreed to do a study to complement what Mr. Henry did with the courthouse, to expand that study out to the plaza, to document historically what the plaza has been used for and what periods improvements were made to it, and to come up with a design that would restore it to a more workable and historically accurate configuration. And I think particularly in light of the success of the Thursday Night Music Festival, in light of the farmers market and the popularity of that as a social cultural gathering point again, and hopefully more events that we have planned shortly for the plaza, I think there's an increasing awareness, not just by the town of Taos, but by residents throughout the county, of that plaza and the historic downtown really reestablishing itself as a heart of entire community. And I do think in that light, shifting some of this money back from the walking map and some staff costs, which, you know, we're going to pay for a planner one way or another. I think it's kind of a cheap thing to take the historic money and use that to underwrite 50% of a planner in the department that we're going to pay for anyway. So I would more than welcome as the town manager if it was the wishes of this group. And SHPO was very open to the idea of changing it back to expand the list of historic structures and expanding the borders of the district. So if I'm so directed, I would be more than happy to amend that grant and have the ability to do that before we sign it.
What do you need from us, other than?
Just tell me to do it.
Yeah, yes, sir. What?
Just tell me to do it.
Everybody in
I think we're
favor?
all in favor of that, expanding the depth and breadth of width of the buildings that we consider to be historic.
The only thing with that, if I might interject one tiny thing, is that that is something that is always in progress. There is no finite map, and part of, we have, at any given moment in time, we have X amount of established historic buildings. And part of the work of the Historic Preservation Commission in conjunction with Planning and Zoning is to continue to identify with Planning and Zoning buildings that should still be included. And there are guidelines for those inclusions. Number one, that the owners themselves need to feel the same way and want to cooperate with that. And so that is something that will constantly be in flux. We were provided with a little map there by Amy the last time, but it was just buildings, and it was
actually a zoning map.
fairly, exactly. And, but so that's the only consideration there, that, you know, that is a project that's constantly in flux. And buildings, as our work continues, there are buildings that will continually be added on.
But there's no vehicle at this point that we can point to, or that
Right.
that the staff can point to, or that we can point to and say that's 115 La Loma Plaza, and it's designated as such and such, or contributing, or maybe a third category that is. I don't know what the third one would be, but maybe some of the ones that were contributing should be moved up to significant, and then
Right, exactly.
the others that. So, and how do we get that all in line with SHPO and so forth? So it takes quite a bit of, and I think that they were undertaking that. I don't know why we just work with what we're all given, I think, and there were quite a few loose ends, and it was quite a disappointment to me to be changing horses there. And I don't know all the reasons, but in terms of the work, I thought there was some work in progress that I wish, like the stuff we brought up, that would continue. And thank you for considering refunding some of these or redirecting some of those funds. I think I speak for the group that anything we can do to shore up our legalese in terms of preservation is more than welcome. I just feel that sometimes we take on more than we have authority of, and rewriting codes and stuff is just like rewriting the Constitution or something.
That's
It's well, we need help with it. So thank you for today, for helping us out today.
Well, Mr. Chair, what I will do too is I think it's important that you do have appropriate guidance and continuity. So wherever you have business on the agenda that might require some legal advice, from now on, we'll have the town attorney present as well.
That'd be great.
And I can assure you that we have that this mayor and administration have a very serious commitment to rebuild the planning department. I apologize for any break in here. It's not often that you lose 3 people out of a 5-person department.
Sure.
But we're taking a little longer pause because we want to expand that department into planning, community, economic development. We certainly see the history of this town and its architecture as being critical to tourism and the economy. It is what makes us unique. An interesting situation happened when we were looking at the park name, and I had walked through but never really stopped in the cemetery over there. And it was kind of ironic to me to find that we were arguing about that somehow we were undoing something that people had done to honor Kit Carson, when in fact it was an interesting bit of history when you get back through going through the deeds to find out that the folks that had bought that cemetery bought it with the intention of doing 2 things. They wanted, during the Depression in 1932, to bring people here from outside, so they took the 2 religious holidays of the fiestas and created a commercial marketing day, which was done by Anglo outsiders, and that same group, which included some local Masons, then bought property which included the Kit Carson Cemetery, which had previously been a cemetery, and obliterated that border of the cemetery, and wrote a new deed that didn't distinguish the cemetery from the other properties, and deed restricted it that it permanently had to be used for recreational purposes. So it's funny how history goes that way. But in walking through that cemetery, that's a piece of history that we are not taking advantage of. As complex as our history is, once we got down and had a map that identified all of those graves and the relationship of all of those people, you could have walked that 1/10 of a square mile and laid out for everybody in a walking tour the entire complex history of this area. And we have that same ability to do that with our architecture here too, and we're not taking advantage. We're not publicizing how unique each of these buildings are, and to stand outside and say, and these are the events that went on in this place. And we really need to do that to distinguish ourselves from other, in quote, tourist destinations.
Yeah, what about the tunnels?
Yeah.
Manager
Okay,
Bellis.
so I will entertain a motion to adjourn, and
I just want to make sure that Manager Bellis has heard us that we would like the walking map component of the grant expanded to help us create a better survey of what's contributing, what's significant in the historic overlay zone. Was that your point in bringing up the mapping? Otherwise, the map is going to be weak for us and not strong.
No, wait a minute. The walking tour is I'm sure, complementary to all the business going on in terms of the culture and so forth. I'm speaking just myself for the historic preservation.
Right.
That I, as an architect, would like to see a map. It's just, for me, like to see a floor plan of what someone is, a site plan, a floor plan, or master plan of what's going on, and that it's something that's open for the staff, for the public, and that we can rely on, and a method that it could stay dynamic. If there are things that are added to or taken away from, that we could keep upgrading it with the computer age and so forth. So what he was talking about, we do?
If you go on the town website,
Yes.
there is a historic building geodatabase where you can click on an address, and if it's a historic property, you get a PDF of an analysis of it when it was built.
But is that contemporary?
Why it's historic.
Okay, no. So that's good, but what I'm asking is, what about the gray areas?
Right.
And,
The non-contributing structures.
well, the
that
ones
may
that
or
don't
may
have a
not-
title,
Yeah,
that are part of the fiber.
right.
And is that thing,
It's not entirely accurate.
Well-
For example,
Okay.
at the last meeting, we were given a presentation by town staff on the building across the street. I think it's El Pueblo Hall. It's owned by the town. It's actually on the geo database. I couldn't actually get it to open up on the computer, but it's a historic structure. And there was actually no acknowledgement of that by Mr. Kennebec. Maybe he didn't know, maybe town staff didn't know. But just out of curiosity, I went on this database, and
it's there.
it's listed as a historic building.
Mhm.
Although I wasn't able to open up the file. So, it's got some bugs, that map that the town has on their website, but it is a pretty good resource.
no, I don't deny that it's not a good resource, Commissioner. I think that the information is out and around. And I do think that some things are slipping through the cracks. There's been made examples of that have been brought here. But short of going by address, I would like to just see a map that just, you can point to that building, or you can point to that cluster
Yeah.
and know its designation by just a color code of three different colors.
I would encourage everybody on
We-
this commission to play around with what I just mentioned, this.
I know, but
historic-
then can you help us play around with putting it on a physical map?
Yes, sir.
Besides
I
just to
can
pick
print
and choose?
for you.
Can I ask, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what you're, because I kind of hear what all of you're saying, but I think you have a different end goal in mind. So is the goal to develop this map to identify structures for historical purposes for potential preservation? Or is it as a reference tool for this group? Or is it to convey that information to the public? Because those are different things.
Really well, then I'm making it more complex, because I would like it to be all of the above.
Yeah.
Okay, because the conveying to the public, the geospatial databases, GIS layers, are very data intensive, and they're very difficult for the average person to understand. But they can be reduced to a PDF or JPEG image, which can be made into an app, so that people walking around, which most people don't have access to this when they're here, but they do have access to this.
Right.
And what we could do is that the person's phone automatically locates where they are, and we could have an app that offered them what buildings were in proximity, and then gave information about those buildings. And that we can do, that's an IT function. We can develop that in our IT department.
Well, that may be a way to do that. Is there a chance of making a printout of that?
Sure.
Okay, well, that's more where I'm coming from. I mean,
That is not difficult to do. If you go to the town website today, right now, this minute, there's a map of the documented historic structures within the historic zone. And the historic zone is not large, actually.
No, it's not.
no. Okay, so then, I would like to have you print up a copy for the rest of our commissioners, at least for me to see. But what I would also encourage is to have that, and here's probably the more difficult part, is that to be updated.
Yes.
Because I have a feeling that information is
Very out of date.
70 years old, or 60.
Yeah.
No, I think it was, well, okay.
It is very out of date. Out of date, you're correct.
Well, I'd like to see it.
And it's full of, bugs and inaccuracies, but
Well-
it's a starting point.
Yeah,
And
okay,
my point is this. I think we're all ignoring that. We've had, just in my brief time on this commission, we've had several presentations, including tonight, where even staff brought us a packet of recent photographs where, in fact, what I'd like to see is actually the nomination, the listing of this property that is actually on the town website, I believe. Just print that for me. That way I know, oh, this thing was built in 1932 by the Romero family, and it was used as their home. Not just photographs from today. And the same thing happened 2 meetings ago where we were talking about a historic building across the street. Nobody came to the table with the state register listing, which has all the data on the structure. And in fact, I think it's just simply on the website. I don't know if you have access to the internet right now, Rick, but
Yeah.
pull one up. Pull up La Posta.
Okay, but David, I went over to that building,
Yes, sir.
and then when this building came to question, we walked over to it.
Yes, we did.
So I'm much more physically oriented. I want to see the building. I want to know which building it is.
I do too.
Who built it is good, important stuff, but what I'm looking at is what we have and how we can take care of it. And I'm not taking away from that.
I'm just
I think that
simply-
that's also, well, that information be collated somehow, and
Yeah.
but
I think we're
part of it is when staff makes its recommendations, is that they have a way, and maybe, I'm not putting it on someone else, I'm just saying, it's all information, but I still want the physical, I would like it to be collated, and a physical, something that we can go to.
Sure.
And if you want to go further and further and further, there's a lot of good history and all that. And
There
so,
is.
other than that, I really entertain a motion to adjourn.
Very good. I second that.
Yes,
Yes.
I agree.
Good meeting.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Okay.